Something useful, like fighting crime.
Yeah, well, when you find this ghostly clown that you're all searching for, do give us a call.
Or I could just throw you in jail.
What for? Making you look stupid?
I have the power.
Thank you, He-Man. Can we please get on with this? The dirty tablecloth's beginning to grate on me.
We are talking Crispy's Curse. This one is written and directed by John Williams. Probably not that John Williams. Anyway, this one actually stars Derek Acorah, albeit in a very small role, but he is actually the named person here. And if you're not familiar with Derek Acorah, he is a real-life spirit medium, pretty famous in the UK for, being being on a variety of reality kind of TV shows. Sadly passed away now, but he is a fairly famous figure in the UK on a lot of these kind of ghost hunting shows and things like this, Most Haunted, that type of thing. So the story here focuses on this evil clown, or the spirit of this evil clown. We've seen a few of those recently, haven't we? But nonetheless, here is another one. And he has come back to life to cause murder and mayhem upon this small town, the small English town. And it takes the combined efforts of the local police, a Christian rock band, and a small group of paranormal investigators to try and stand in Crispy's way. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss what works, first of all, with Crispy's Curse. Now, this is a horror comedy with a big emphasis on the comedy. And I think, to be honest with you, it leans so far into the kind of the comedy side of things, there's little room for much else. To me, the highlight of this movie was Darren McCree as Alan Baptiste, who is the son of Derek Acorah in this movie. And he is also a spirit medium and is a kind of a prissy spirit medium who is very kind of antisocial and but very amusing, I have to say, with some of his kind of lines and line delivery. And yeah, he joins this kind of like this other group of paranormal investigators. And to be honest, I thought his actual character was extremely funny, very over the top, but very funny, with some actually great gags in there as well. There are a few actually funny gags. The humour here throughout the movie is extremely broad, very juvenile. The movie almost plays like a kind of a cartoon, really, rather than a realistic movie. It kind of is really a spoof, I suppose, or borders on being a spoof. And although a lot of the humour is subjective, there's very few jokes that everyone is going to like. But to me, he was the kind of the standout of this movie with some great lines and some great delivery as well of the lines. But there also are a few other kind of like visual gags. There's one, for example, where someone gets eaten by piranhas and the police pull back the body, and there's a couple of piranhas still kind of like clinging onto the bones, flapping around, things like that. Again, a few kind of visual gags here that work, and that are quite funny. And there's a few other lines here and there that I think are funny. Just kind of like really trading insults. We have mainly between, for example, the police and this kind of group of paranormal investigators. Again, some funny dialogue here, particularly with one of the kind of the female paranormal investigators. There are a couple of instances where they do use very cheap, albeit practical gore effects for kind of head explodings, things like this. And the Crispy the Clown character sort of almost sets up these almost like James Bond 60s style traps for his kind of victims, which, I guess is pretty fun. And there are, again, it's very low budget, doesn't look realistic, but again, it's people's head exploding, things like that. Some fun kind of gore effects. And the addition of the Christian metal band was somewhat of a unique touch. They don't really do very much, if we're being completely honest. They do seem somewhat superfluous to the plot, and they probably get the most screen time, but nonetheless, it's an interesting add-on. But let's talk about what doesn't work. I think the Crispy figure himself is pretty weak in regards to kind of killer clowns. The interesting decision that they've made with this one is he doesn't look menacing at all. He very much just looks like just a bog standard clown, really. So I get, in a way, I suppose I can understand that, you know, he's not looking deliberately kind of menacing. He looks more like just you're at a real clown. But the way it's filmed and stuff, and the guy who's playing him is kind of speaking in this like quasi-Irish accent. You just can barely understand what he's saying, I have to be honest. And I just didn't think he was a particularly engrossing character as a kind of an antagonist here. Yeah, there's a couple of kind of like amusing set pieces with him and kind of back and forth when you can understand what he's saying. But to me, he was actually quite weak as a kind of an antagonist, and we don't really get to grips with what he's really trying to do in things like this. The movie, like I've said, there's maybe too many characters here. We have such a large group of people kind of like going against Crispy. There's maybe just too many in this group. There's a shot where they're all there, and it's like a gang. There's like a whole gang's worth of people, and they're although there is a reasonable body count in this, and there are some some funny jokes in regards to this hipster band and things like that. A lot of the kills are actually kind of off screen, I guess, for budgetary reasons. But it's just such a silly movie. It's just really silly. There's very little horror in this horror comedy. The jokes, although I did like some of them, a lot of them are very, very broad, very juvenile, and the characters just seem like too much like cartoon characters. There is, for example, this guy who is like a heavy metal journalist following this band around, and he literally acts like a kind of like a Bugs Bunny sort of cartoon character. It's very distracting. I mean, everyone's acting somewhat exaggerated, but there's characters here that just go way too far with it. The plot as well isn't particularly interesting. Like I said, the focus tends to be on this heavy metal band. But they don't really have much to do, and they really have very little in regard to the end result. So it almost seems pointless. I have to be honest with you. Although I enjoyed some separate scenes here, it's particularly the ones that involve Alan as the character, the main spiritualist here. You know, are probably the best. And as I say, Derek Acorah is in this movie as his father, but really probably 2-3 minutes of screen time, that's it, the beginning and the end. So don't be expecting he is just here to put his name to it, so to try and have a little bit of star power here. But it's not a great movie at all. I think for the most people will think it's just cheap, juvenile, silly. So I want to give that a 3 out of 10, although there are a couple of moments that I enjoyed. 3 out of 10, have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.